Hey all, welcome back to the Cartridge Twins. It has been a minute. I've been traveling a lot, including finally taking a trip to visit the Nintendo store in New York City. Pretty cool place, got a couple of amiibo. But anyway, that's not why you're here. Today we're here to talk about Paper Mario, the Thousand Year Door on Nintendo Switch. How good is it? Is it the best Paper Mario of all time, like everyone says? Let's find out. First things first, I gotta say, I have never played the original GameCube Thousand Year Door, so I'm not gonna be comparing it to that. I've had a friend, shout out Jason, who has told me to play that game for the longest time, but by the time I was ready to get around to it, COVID hit, and the price of that game just got way out of my range, so I never got around to it. So when this was announced for the Nintendo Switch, I was very excited to finally be able to give this game, which, you know, is allegedly the best Paper Mario ever, a chance. I've now played through 4 Paper Mario games, so when it comes to the story, I think with Thousand Year Door, it's wonderful, and there's a lot of silly twists and turns, and just like every other Paper Mario game, there is some great hilarious dialogue. But honestly, if you've played any of the other Paper Marios, that is, you've kind of experienced the story already, in my opinion. They're very similar. The games act the same. It's more the dialogue being maybe better in one than another, but for me, the Thousand Year Door didn't really jump out as way better than any Paper Mario story-wise, but it was great, and you're gonna have a good time with that story. The short summation of the story is Peach is visiting this town, Rogueport, and she comes across this treasure map, which she sends to Mario. Mario discovers Peach is missing, big surprise, and so he's gotta find her. So he heads to Rogueport, he learns about the Thousand Year Door, your dangerous adventure starts, and you just start collecting crystal stars, for better or worse, going to a bunch of different areas, and that, to me, is where the game is great. The different environments in this game are fantastic. I think for me, that's the main draw of Paper Mario games, just progressing from each, what I'm going to call level, and just seeing the beautiful settings for each one, the hilarious characters in each one, what Mario enemies from other Mario games are going to pop up, what dialogue are they going to have. The setting and the environments are really, for me, what make these Paper Mario games great. The biggest point of contention that I have with any Paper Mario game is the combat. Thankfully, in Thousand Year Door, the combat is fantastic. It really takes just a little step forward when compared to the original Nintendo 64 Paper Mario, and I am okay with that. I think with the later entries on Switch and even Wii U, the combat just gets way too tedious. Sometimes I think even with the original or the Thousand Year Door, the combat, again, it still is a little tedious, but it's way better and quicker than, say, on the Wii U, and especially the Switch, which I was not a big fan of. Yeah, you get used to it, but that's a video for another day. The combat here in Thousand Year Door is wonderful. Each character has a different, like, button press action, for example, and I think that helps really change things up versus just simply timing it correctly with A, for example, if you've played any of those games. So yeah, the combat here is not a barrier of entry for this game, when I would say in the later titles it definitely is. So earlier I praised the dialogue of this game, and that is true. It has a lot of hilarious moments, and I think it's very well done, but I do have to say there are definitely times I'm like, should I just start button mashing to get through all this dialogue, because it can be a lot. One example that sticks out in my mind, and honestly, it's kind of funny, so it's kind of one of those love-hate things. Speaking of love, you have to listen to a character say "I love you" 100 times. Literally 100 times. And you just sit there, you're button mashing. It's funny, I get it. I'm glad it's there, but there are little things like that. You're just ready to keep moving on and exploring and adventuring, but you just gotta wait and get through that dialogue. And even at the end of the game, with the end credits, there's a lot of dialogue. Again, some may be unnecessary. Nintendo's really good about making you sit through a lot of like dialogue boxes and things, so it can slow down the game. And even in battles, there's some slow parts that I just think could have been sped up. But again, it's nothing major, and that's just for me, and I bet some people love that about these games, but I'm not huge on dialogue. But what is here is really well done, so don't let that throw you off from playing the game. And if you do really hate it, well, just mash your way through it. I don't think the story is just so in-depth that you're gonna miss out on a lot if you do that. You will miss out on some, and you definitely might have a hard time knowing where to go next if you button mash through the dialogue. But thankfully, you can just hit a button on your controller, and there's a little helpful friend who's going to help you know where to go anyway. So that leads me to my next point. This game is very accessible. It is on the easier side, and I'm okay with that. I don't need a super difficult RPG where I just have to grind and grind to get levels just to get through it. But having said that, I do want to mention the final battle in this game. Whew, the difficulty spikes a little bit. I did beat it on the first try, but there were definitely some points I was like, oh man, was I ready to take on this battle? It took me a while to beat. I wish I would have timed it. It might have taken me 30 minutes to finish that last battle. It was a grind, not in a bad way, but compared to the rest of the game, this is where the difficulty comes in. I do think if you played the recent Mario RPG remake, you're going to feel right at home with the Thousand Year Door. Both are great games. Honestly, I might have preferred Mario RPG over the Thousand Year Door. But again, it really is a toss-up. Both are great remakes. Both are great games. Now, is the Thousand Year Door my favorite Paper Mario? It's close. I think I would give the edge to Paper Mario 64 because when I first played that, I was just pleasantly surprised. It was just so fun. Plus, I think the length of the Thousand Year Door kind of dragged on a little bit for me at times. I think it took me about 35 hours to beat, whereas Paper Mario 64 was about 25 hours for me. So that's about a 10-hour difference. So if you want a longer game, yeah, go Thousand Year Door. They're both very similar. They're both great games. I don't think you can go wrong either way. If you're not a big fan of the Nintendo 64 era of games, yeah, definitely go Thousand Year Door. And I have no idea how Paper Mario 64 plays if you're using a modern controller. I used the just the original N64 controller. And for Thousand Year Door, I played it on my Pro controller. I don't know if the GameCube Switch controller works with Thousand Year Door. That is something that would be awesome if it did. And honestly, I should have tried it. I didn't even think about it till after I beat the game. So if it does, hey, let me know. Maybe I need to try that out and play through it again. I think this is a game that I could play through again after a year or two taking a break from it. Or maybe just jump back in and get a little more of the collectibles and start working more toward 100% completion. But in the end, another great Paper Mario game. So there you have it. Some of my thoughts on Paper Mario, the Thousand Year Door. I love the game. Visually fantastic. The gameplay is great. I mean, it's the Thousand Year Door. You've heard it all. Wonderful game. So let me know, what did I miss? What do you love about the game? What's a game I should play next? Because right now I am just not sure what I'm going to dive into. And thanks for watching. And as always, remember, without video games, things do not seem to go as well.